Well, for all the passion out there for both the Muppets and Alastair Sim, what kind of backlash awaits me over my number one? And I'm also going to wish my number one happy 40th anniversary. Welcome to my channel, KC, that's me, Carrie Chug, the Sledge Storyteller. I love talking about storytelling as an art form, its many mediums and its history. I also like to talk about, at this time of year, good Christmas storytelling. If you like this video, please click like. If you like this channel, please click subscribe. And while you're at it, make one more click on the notification button. Thank you. Now, one thing I want to clarify, this is often referred to as a TV movie, first aired on CBS in 1984, hence, 40th anniversary. But before that, it was a theatrical release in England. Now, there's so much super fun trivia connected to this movie that it would extend this video way too long and would convolute it. So save a few items and other items directly connected to this movie. All that I'll write in the description below will be pertaining to that cool trivia. So here we go with a review, and once again, it's broken up into categories. So George C. Scott brings his Oscar-caliber talent to the role when Scrooge needs to be smug, frightened, angry, desperate, compassionate. Scott delivers, all in spades. And the reasoning behind that will be again covered in the categories that follow. Now, initially what stands out in this scene is Scrooge's trepidation amid all the surrounding haunts around him as he returns home from work. And once in his bedroom, as I see that look on Scrooge, I not only think that it's an indication of how fearful he is of what horror could be coming his way, but he knows that if that face is seen by anyone at the London Exchange that he works with,
your mind?
Right, I have changed my mind.
Oh, good, then you'll take our...
and dominate.
Damn it, Scrooge, it's not fair.
No, but it's business.
There goes all the power that he wields there. Now, to Marley. Frank Finlay delivers my all-time favorite performance in this role because he brings a bombastic diatribe to this scene. We get all the intimidation that Marley is supposed to bring upon Scrooge and all that pain that he exudes over the suffering that he endured over the past 7 years before his death. And Scott, he keeps both the harsh denial and scared act going beautifully with the needed quick shift between the two. The only thing keeping this whole scene from being perfect is the omission of the bit from the novella where ghosts of the rich dead are trying in vain to help a hopeless mother and her baby, so well depicted in other adaptations. At this point in his career, David Warner was mostly known for playing sinister characters like Jack the Ripper in Time After Time and Sark in Tron, so no surprise to learn that he was initially offered the role of Jacob Marley, and it's easy to imagine him pulling that off. I'll leave the link in the description to the interview where he spoke of that offer. But he decided to go against type at that point in his career to play Bob Crachit, and I'm glad he did, as he nails it, playing Scrooge's struggling clerk. Same with his playing husband and father to his household. Susannah York is more than qualified playing Mrs. Crachit, both loving and forceful when needed. And then there's Anthony Walters as Tiny Tim. I love his first scene waiting for his father to finish work and staying in good spirits even when Scrooge puts him down. The novella depicts Tim as both frail and wise for his age, and the way he interacts with his dad, I find it to be very convincing. And what also makes his depiction stand out is how far they go in showing how sickly he was, with well-placed circles under his eyes. So Angela Pleasance, sister to Donald Pleasance, gives the Ghost of Christmas Past a solid performance with a soft yet candid delivery. And while my favorite ghost performance for this segment was in the Alastair Sim version, this version has my favorite Christmas Past segment overall. We get a little boy Ebenezer all alone in the classroom after all his schoolmates have left for a Christmas holiday, with old Ebenezer recounting the adventures in which he immersed himself at that point in his life in literature, where he saw Ali Baba and Robinson Crusoe right there with him. Then there's an awesomely played transition where Scrooge's sister comes into the classroom, a suddenly young adult Scrooge, to do this usual picking up to come home now that.
Father's much kinder than he used to be.
And then we get what I believe is the only time Scrooge's father has been featured in an adaptation, and we get a semi-ironically cold reception, and to Sister Fan's dismay. Ebenezer's return home will only last 3 days before he begins his apprenticeship at Fezziwig's. But what's key here is while we see the unpleasant exchange, there's no missing old Ebenezer's disdainful stare as he watches his father deal it out, while his younger self hurtfully relents. Then that same stare continues as these two guys almost face each other in the carriage, yet won't even look at each other in the eye. That apprenticeship comes as the best thing that ever happened to him at that point, because Fezziwig essentially becomes the father figure he never had, because he seems so happily settled in that apprenticeship. Then when Fezziwig starts the big Christmas Eve dinner and dance, he eagerly joins in on the good times and sees some of the courting with Belle. And I have to mention, I'm not going to look his name up, but this actor playing Fezziwig, he's giving opportunity to show so much warmth and so much joy and so much involvement. I love how he's featured here. But we also see the early stages of Scrooge's obsession with gaining wealth. He has to be nudged to join the party from his work, and he expresses the idea that he must win his fortune to be worthy of Belle's hand in marriage. We find that some obsession would cause him to distance himself from her, and Belle eventually picks up on that and breaks off their engagement in a very well played version of that scene, as well as the scene where Scrooge is brought to Belle's happy household of a husband and several children. It's enough to enrage Scrooge to where he sneers at Belle over the expression of pity over what had become of him, and doing the only thing he can to end his exposure to the truth by dousing out the ghost with the extinguishing cap. Just about every actor playing the Ghost of Christmas Present in other adaptations, they start the performance bellowing out that big introduction. But Edward Woodward brings that bravado multiple times with operatic perfection. The Crachit family dinner plays out beautifully in the present segment, with all the aforementioned qualities of their performances, and watching the spirit and Scrooge's observance. Here it becomes a lot better than most depictions, because Woodward, he gives that same bravado in delivering that cold, hard fact, especially in turning Scrooge's own words against him.
It may well be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child.
Then there's nephew Fred Holloway's gathering at Christmas. Roger Rees, he's the best ever Fred. I myself saw this long before I would see him again as the sheriff of Rottingham in Robin Hood Men in Tights. I love the insight shared in pointing out that for all his uncle's wealth, he doesn't even make himself comfortable with it. But his performance plays the warm-hearted Fred to the hilt, especially again when he shares his belief in his potential based on the love his mother had for him. Scrooge still can't let go of his ideas that had been given to the charity collectors earlier on in the movie, that there are institutions that served as safety nets for the poor, prisons, workhouses, the treadmill, and poor law. But this homeless family's mother is adamant that she'd rather that they'd all drown in the river than go to the parish poorhouse and be separated forever. The biggest wake-up call of the movie comes with the oft-used, for good reason, sequence as the spirit unveils the sickly children, ignorance and want. But beyond the usual emphasis of their representing society's failure, Scrooge is repulsed that he begs the spirit to cover them, and he does.
They are hidden.
But that opens the door to Scrooge's biggest gut punch.
But they live. Oh, they live.
And he's left alone only for a while to think things over. I remember first seeing this adaptation and having already seen how the future segment had been handled with the Alastair Simba adaptation, and wondering what 1984's practical effects technology would bring to it here. And honestly, I think there was enough that they could have pulled it off in similar fashion in 1951. It's all basic practical and sound effects at play here. So here, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is played by Michael Carter, just a year after he played Bib Fortuna in Return of the Jedi. But while he effectively did his part with the gesturing, So much of what made this work so well was the costuming, the use of limited lighting, cinematography, and the sound department doing that shrill banshee shriek. Everyone plays their heart out in the obligatory scenes to make them work. While comparatively condensed, the old Joe and Mrs. Dilber scene is carried out well. The heavy emotions are there among the Crachits after losing Tiny Tim, especially when he tries to come off as strong enough to move forward. He keeps falling apart in the attempt. And the big reveal of Scrooge's grave is effectively played out because it's done so gradually. And again, Scott plays Scrooge desperate for a second chance to right his wrongs in spades. You put me in the shoes of the little boy on the street and give me the choice as to which Scrooge I get to have that interaction with to get the prize turkey. Yes, it's Scott Scrooge. He exudes the ultimate warmth and humor here. And Scrooge on Christmas morning demands a loud, unrestrained, and boisterous performance. And while Scott is not as delightfully animated as Alastair Sim, it doesn't get any more
Me as a schoolboy!
than to be shouting out loud while jumping on the bed. His reconciliation with charity collectors who got the cold shoulder from him the day before, it's standard, it's played out very well. And the different approach of his meeting with Fred and his wife before the party to accept the invitation is also a very warm and fulfilling exchange. The climactic scene at Scrooge's counting house is also up to standard, as Scrooge starts with a stern facade before declaring all the good news. And an interesting touch, Bob Crachit has the specificity that his salary will be doubled. And in the final bit, we see the standard invigorated Tiny Tim and no longer pale with dark eye circles as they walk off as best buds, he and Scrooge. Now, even if I saw George C. Scott as just a decent Scrooge, I believe this would still be my favorite Christmas Carol adaptation, with powerful performances from so many supporting actors, as well as how well the script was written and how well organized these scenes were. And I can't help but think that the director Clive Donner, having been the film editor for the Alastair Sim adaptation, yes, had the advantage in being ahead of the game on what works and what doesn't work, and found the perfect formula. Nick Bacut's score is off the charts awesome. And I feel like I'm cutting it close airing that much of it, but can't help it. This adaptation isn't perfect, and I don't think anybody has cracked the code, and it's doubtful that anyone will manage to make a perfect version. Nor would I call it the most accurate, but it will always be the gold standard for me, and another of that I would just see twice at least every Christmas season. But that's my take on A Christmas Carol with George C. Scott. Agree, disagree, something I left out? Please let me know in the comment section. The link to order the Sledge comic miniseries is in the link below in both digital and paper format. Give it a look, consider buying it. Let's all look for civility amid all the bad news out there, social, political strife. Let's not hate, and let's find friends wherever we may go. Everyone be safe.
And God bless us all, everyone.